Now, before we charge on and go into matching our short sequence, we need to take a look at what is arguably our most powerful tool in making sure our grades are matching up, which is the stills gallery. The stills gallery contains still images extracted from our grade and organizes them into albums or folders. We can perform a grade, capture a still image, and then use that still image as a reference when matching two shots up later, or copy the entire grade or part of that grade over. We're going to take a look at how to use it. So here's a grade that I've performed, and so far it's okay, basic primary stuff. We just need to make sure that the whole sequence matches. We need to be sure that we don't get any jarring shifts in brightness or colour balance as we watch through it. Now the shot's alright, but oh dear. And it gets even worse. Well, hey. Now we need to match all these shots together, and just flicking back and forth between them whilst we're working is not the best way to do that. What I want to do now is I want to go back to my first shot, which I know is graded correctly, and I want to be sure that the gallery is active. And if you cannot see the gallery on the left-hand side of the screen, go to the upper left and click the gallery icon, and it will expose the stills gallery in the upper left of the screen. Now I want to right-click or control-click within the viewer and choose Grab Still. Notice this generates a still image and places it in the gallery to the left. Now, if I go ahead and mouse over this still image, weird stuff begins to happen. The clip might begin to play. If I'm on a different clip, the colour will change and the clip will begin to play as I mouse over it. And this is down to some settings that may or may not be on by default in your version of Resolve. This is called Live Preview and Hover Scrub Preview. Now, scrubbing refers to dragging a playhead around in order to play a clip. And if I mouse over this still, it's going to scrub the clip I'm currently on. Fortunately, this no longer causes us to lose our place. In older versions of Resolve, it actually moved the playhead around and caused us to lose our place when doing this. But this feature has been very, very annoying for a lot of people. So let's go over how to turn it off and get a bit more control over it. Now, there are two parts to this. There is the live preview and the hover scrub preview. The live preview is what's making the color change. The live preview is telling us what will our current clip look like if we were to paste the grade in our currently selected still onto it. That's what we're seeing. What would happen if I took the grade from this shot and pasted it on here? Because this still image, it's not just a still image that's a reference image. It also contains a copy of the color grade taken from the shot at the time we took the still. So, not only can this be a reference image, we can also paste the grade from this still directly onto our current shot. And we're seeing a preview of what would happen if we do that here. The second part is hover scrub preview. And that's what's making the clip play. This is the most annoying one. I generally like to leave live preview on, but I change hover scrub preview to thumbnail. Thumbnail and viewer will make the viewer change. Thumbnail will just make the thumbnail play. And it can be useful just to have a loose indication of what the grade will look like. We also have a zoom slider up here in the gallery. So I can make these stills bigger, and then I can scrub and get a loose idea of how well the shot might take the grade within the still. And it currently looks pretty good, honestly. So that's how to take control of these features. You can just turn live preview off and that will disable the hover scrub, that will disable live preview. I do like to keep live preview on, but I don't want hover scrub preview in the viewer. That I find very annoying. So now, let's take a look at how we might actually make use of this still. I'm going to shrink it back down a bit with the zoom bar. So what I can do is I can either copy and paste the grade directly onto the shot. I can right click, apply grade, and that will overwrite the grade I have currently on the shot. That will overwrite everything, so we want to be careful when we do that. Or I can use it as a reference image and I can grade manually to match, which most of the time is the best choice. And I do that by right clicking and choosing play still. Used to be the play still option was in the viewer, now it's actually on the still in the gallery. Now, what happens is we get a split screen, or we get a wipe, showing the reference image over the current clip we are working on. Now I can left click and I can drag to manipulate this wipe to show different parts of the reference image and different parts of the clip we're working on. And in the upper part of the viewer, these icons here change the wipe mode. By default it's horizontal, but we can go vertical, we can go diagonal, and then we can go weird things, like we can get a kind of crossfade version. A mix, alpha isn't going to be useful most of the time. Difference, I've never used. Picture in picture, Venetian blinds and checkerboard, truly bizarre. Never used any of those in 10 years of doing this. Most of the time, horizontal is fine. Every now and again, vertical. Vertical can be useful if you have a shot with two contributors on either side of the frame, because horizontal will always block one of those out, and vertical lets you see the top half of both of them, so you can get a good idea of how to match skin that way. But that's the only real time I would change these wipe modes, and like I said, these weird ones, I've never used them, so don't worry about them. So now, I'm basically just working on this shot, but I can see a reference image. I can just bring this up a little bit to match. And just set my shadows, and now I've got a much better match here. Maybe the saturation could be a touch high. There we go. So now I want to get rid of my still and watch my clip. In the upper left of the viewer, there's this split screen icon. This is the image wipe icon. We just click that to turn off our still. Now let's see how these two clips play into each other. And that's a much, much better match. I always like to save whenever I've made a successful match like that, so just in case there's a crash or whatever, I don't lose any work. So that's the first way of using a still. The second way is, as we've already covered, simply to copy it over, and I can right click and apply grade, or I can simply middle click or mouse wheel click on either a still or a shot in the timeline. I can right click and I can choose apply grade from a shot in the timeline as well. So whilst you don't need to take a still in order to copy grades across, cataloguing your looks, cataloguing your work is actually quite useful. Because whilst you're working, it's useful to have stills of an old grade on standby in case a client changes their mind and you have to start rolling back on certain shots. And believe me, that does happen. And also, if a client wants to see the difference between two versions or two passes of the grade, this can be a useful way to show that as well. Now there's one more thing to go over, which is how to share stills between projects. By default, a still remains in the project in which it was grabbed or taken, but we can move a still into a more permanent place by making it into what we call a power grade. A power grade is basically a still, but it's available in the power grade albums, and in turn, those albums are available across all of the projects you have on a particular database. If you have more than one database, then the power grades will only appear in one of them, not all of them, and it corresponds to the project and its database when you took the still and converted it into a power grade. So if you've done something that you really like and you want to try using it in another project, then just click and grab the still and drag and drop it into the power grade album. Then, if we were to go to another project, open up the gallery and go to the power grade album, we would just see that still right here, and we can see any other stills we've taken and saved as power grades as well. So this was a good introduction to the stills gallery. It's a tool you will be using constantly, so make sure you have a go. Grab some stills, then bring them up as references. It's really important to use stills as a reference to match the grade as you work and prevent what we call creep, which is when a grade appears to change over the course of a project. So click on through to the next lecture once you're ready.